Let me have a look. One moment. Right. Okay.
Hello, Ram.
Dr. Bhatt, good to see you. Nice to see you.
Namaskar and welcome everyone to the international webinar organized by Allahabad Agriculture Institute and Allahabad School of Education Schwartz on the topic the psychological impact of COVID-19 pandemic on human life. This is Prem Prabha Singh, organizing secretary of this webinar. I'm truly delighted to welcome all of you. Before we start this webinar, we would like to invoke God's blessings upon all of us. I now call upon Right Reverend Professor Dr. D.K. Sahu, Dean, Director, Faculty of Theology, Schwartz, to lead us in prayer.
Sister, can you take up the opening prayer?
Let us invoke God's blessings upon each one of us. God, our loving Father, thank and praise you for this important day, on the significant day that you have gathered us, all the participants and all the speakers, to deliberate and discuss on the topic, the psychological impact of COVID-19 pandemic on human life. We know the life of each one of us is in your hands, Almighty God. We beg your mercy upon us so that we may experience the anointing of the Spirit upon each one of us, particularly the speaker, all the speakers, and all the participants. We surrender in your hands this international webinar and ask you to bless each one of us. We make this prayer in the holy name of Jesus, our Lord and Savior. Amen.
Thank you, Sister, for your valuable prayer. Professor Dr. Sister Marian Matthew, Head and Dean of Allahabad School of Education and convener of this webinar, who has been the motivating force, dynamic leader, and constant support behind organizing this event. I would like to invite her to welcome the distinguished chief guest, eminent speakers, dignitaries, and all the participants. Over to you, sister.
I extend a warm and cordial welcome to one and all. On behalf of the university and the organizing committee, it is indeed my privilege and a great pleasure to welcome you all to this international webinar on the topic, the psychological impact of COVID-19 pandemic on human life. I welcome Most Reverend Professor Rajendra Bilal, the Honorable Vice Chancellor of the University. Sir, we are indeed grateful to you for your constant support and guidance in every activities of the university. We thank God for your dynamic leadership, which is an inspiration to all of us. You are a man of prayer and a great believer, guiding this university with the power and strength of God. We welcome you, sir. I extend a warm and cordial welcome our respected chief guest, Professor Dr. A.K. Lawrence, Pro Vice Chancellor, Academic Affairs and Quality Assurance. It's a great privilege to have you with us, sir, for this international webinar. You are a dynamic leader, gifted with unique qualities that an academic administrator requires. You have a sharp mind, and God has endowed you with the organizational abilities par excellence to guide and monitor all the academic activities of the university. You have been constantly guiding and supporting us in organizing this webinar. We welcome you, sir. I sincerely welcome all the officials of the university, Professor Dr. S.V. Lal, Pro Vice Chancellor Administration, Professor Dr. Sarvajit Herbert, Pro Vice Chancellor Planning, Monitoring and Development, Professor Dr. Robin L. Prasad, the Registrar of the University, Engineer C.J. Wesley, the Joint Registrar, who has been constantly available to guide and support us in our endeavor in organizing this international event. We welcome Bishop D.K. Sahu, Dean and Director of the Faculty of Theology, all the directors, deans, and heads of the departments of our university, as well as officials from other universities for joining us in this webinar. I warmly welcome all the guest speakers of this international webinar. Professor Dr. K.N. Bhatt, a renowned professor of economics from G.V. Pant Research Institute, Prayagraj, who is an internationally renowned academician and a social scientist. He has extensively traveled around the world on his visiting academic assignments. He will deliver the keynote address for the webinar. We welcome you, sir. We also welcome Remco van Centine, founder, former director, and former owner of Kemling Private Limited, a globally renowned academician, management personnel from Australia. Thank you, sir, for your generosity in accepting our invitation to be part of this webinar. We welcome Dr. Sister Priska, an eminent educationist, a great psychologist, and a counselor. She will be joining the webinar from Rome. I'm sure with a vast experience and expertise in the field of psychology, she will be able to inspire the participants in dealing with the psychological impact of COVID-19 pandemic. We welcome you, Dr. Sister Priska. We extend a warm welcome to Professor Dr. Atik Ur Rahman, a great HR personnel from Malaysia, a registered Prince 2 practitioner. He is working as the Chief Operating Officer with the People Talent Tech in Malaysia. He has taught organizational psychology and research methods in different universities. We welcome you, sir, and we are waiting to listen to your expert words of wisdom. We extend a warm welcome to Dr. Paul Puducherry, former head Department of Education at Assam Don Bosco University, an excellent educationist, a motivational speaker, currently working as a director ASHA, engaged in research and training activities. We welcome you, sir. We welcome Professor Ambalika Sinha, former head Department of Psychology, Motilal Nehru National Institute of Technology, Prayagraj. Besides her vast teaching experience, she has been a keynote speaker at international conferences and convener of various workshops. We welcome you, madam. We extend a warm welcome to Professor Aaron Singh, former head Department of Psychology, BHU, Varanasi. He is another expert in the field of psychology who can freely share his ideas on the impact of COVID-19 pandemic. We welcome you, sir. I accord a warm and cordial welcome to all the participants from India and overseas who are eagerly waiting to be part of this webinar. I would like to share with you a few thoughts about this webinar. Ever since COVID-19 pandemic has gripped this world, this global health pandemic has affected every person's life in some way or the other, forcing isolation, creating fear, uncertainty, and hopelessness, and this coupled with The economic meltdown is causing huge psychological distress and emotional strain. The crisis might threaten the very existence of many firms as the sectors collapse and economic activity grinds to a halt through quarantining, and self-isolation. The sudden lockdowns, our School of Education is hosting this two-day international webinar on the psychological impact of COVID-19 pandemic on human life. As we all know, webinar has evolved as a platform to share knowledge and thoughts from experts while maintaining social distancing. And I'm sure all the participants who are eagerly waiting will definitely be able to enjoy the messages and the insights of various participants, various speakers, and I wish all the best to the speakers and the participants. Thank you.
Thank you, sister,
Over
for this warm welcome. I now invite Engineer C. John Wesley, Joint Registrar, to share a brief profile of the university.
Thank you, madam. Respected Chief Guest, Professor Dr. A.K. Lawrence, Pro-Vice Chancellor, Academics, distinguished speakers, and my dear participants. Allahabad Agriculture Institute, AAI, now known as Sam Higginbotham University of Agriculture, Technology and Sciences, was established in the year 1910 under the leadership of Dr. Sam Higginbotham. The institution has completed more than 110 years of dedicated and relentless service to the nation, with its vision and mission Gospel and Plow, and its motto, Feed the Hungry and Serve the Land. Under the dynamic leadership of our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Most Reverend Professor Rajendra Bilal, Allahabad Agriculture Institute was conferred the deemed to be university status by the Ministry of Human Resource Development, Government of India in the year 2000. It was later renamed during its centenary year as Sam Higginbotham Institute of Agriculture, Technology and Sciences, deemed to be university by MHRD, Government of India, to honor its founder, that is Dr. Sam Higginbotham. After considering and the adequate availability of teaching and non-teaching staff and other essential infrastructure, the Uttar Pradesh legislature decided to upgrade, reconstitute and establish SHIAT's deemed university as a full-fledged university under the State Act. Hence now we are Sam Higginbotham University of Agriculture, Technology and Sciences. SHIATS is a united endeavor of Christian community in India for promoting rural life and development in conformity with the Christian vision of humankind and the creation. The university is held in trust as a common ecumenical heritage by the Christian churches and Christian organizations of the country. It seeks to be a national center of professional excellence in education and service to the people, with participation of students, faculty members from all over India and abroad. The university operates with Faculty of Agriculture, Engineering and Technology, Sciences, Business Studies, Theology, Animal Husbandry, Humanities, Education, Film and Mass Communication, and Health Sciences. The university strives to prepare its students to take their places as farm managers, agricultural scientists, agricultural officers, extension workers, managers, educationists, agricultural administrators, agricultural scientists, biotechnologists, microbiologists, biochemists, engineers, software professionals, dairy technologists, nutritionists, textile designers, theologians, and many more. Schwartz is an ISO 9001-2015 certified institution and a recognized member of Association of Indian Universities, Indian Agriculture Universities Association, IAUA, International Association of Universities, IAU, All India Association for Christian Higher Education, AICHI, Association of Commonwealth Universities, Asia Pacific Association of Agriculture Research Institutions, APARI, Global Consortium of Higher Education and Research, GCHERA, Trust for Advancement of Agricultural Sciences, STARS, Global Forum on Agriculture Research, and Asian Association of Agriculture Colleges and Universities. The university has signed many international MOUs on academics and research collaborations with many national and international reputed institutions. The NAC, an autonomous institution of UGC, accredited our university with A grade in 2013. And in the year 2014, MHRD Government of India placed Schwartz DU among the A grade deemed university. And 9E Agriculture Institute of Schwartz was accredited by ICR in 2017. We have over 13,000 students currently pursuing their higher studies on campus, with more than 450 teaching and 1,600 non-teaching faculty members from all over India. I congratulate the organizers for taking up a vital topic for this webinar today. I once again express my sincere thanks for inviting me to present a brief sketch about the university. I wish you all the very best and a wonderful webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your constant support and cooperation in organizing this webinar. Now, I would like to invite the Honorable Chief Guest, Professor Dr. A.K.A. Lawrence, Pro Vice Chancellor, Academic Affairs and Quality Assurance, a very dynamic person who is really the motivating force in organizing this international webinar. Sir, we are eagerly waiting to listen to your wisdom, to the words of wisdom. Over to you, sir.
Dr. Paul, the Dean, Head of the Departments, faculty members, and students of Allahabad School of Education of our university. I'm pleased to be a part of this international webinar on psychological impact of COVID-19 pandemic on human life being organized by Allahabad School of Education of Sam Higginbottom University of Agriculture, Technology and Sciences. We are extremely happy and thankful to the Lord for his abundant blessings and mercies upon all of us through this institution of God. We have a long and rich heritage of serving the Lord, the land, and the world. This is a pioneer and professional institution has successfully traveled 110 years, and today as a multi-faculty state university, it stands as a dedicated and relentless service provider to the state, nation, and to the world. Our university has been designing, developing, offering state-of-art undergraduate and postgraduate programs and conducting quality research in accordance with the need of the hour. Coming back to the webinar, COVID-19 is spreading quickly, causing great deal of fear and unrest in public. But today, I am specifically emphasizing the physiological impact of COVID-19 on university and college students and their coping strategies. As we update ourselves, studies have suggested that public health emergencies can have many physiological effects on university students, which can be expressed as anxiety, fear, and worry. COVID-19 related stresses, including economic stresses, effects of daily life, and academic delays, have been positively associated with the level of anxiety symptoms of university students. During this pandemic crisis, mental health of university or college student is significantly affected, and they require attention, help, and support of the society, families, and universities and colleges. We must explore factors influencing their anxiety to design solutions. Central and state government and institutions should collaborate to resolve this problem in order to provide high quality, timely, crisis oriented psychological services to the universities and college students. I am positive organizing secretary has very wisely tapped the major issue of recent times, which has led uh, global attention. And we are positive that this international webinar will project spectrum of various expressions of human psychology during this unprecedented crisis, and our people will have a direction to combat this hazard. The effort of Allahabad School of Education of our university will certainly enlighten the path to overcome the challenges with more opportunities and with a positive outcome. I'm sure Allahabad School of Education look forward to design, develop, and organize similar kind of activities in future also. I would like to thank the keynote speakers for their valuable time. Also express my gratitude to the chairperson, convener, organizing secretaries for organizing this meaningful event and inviting me in this event. Thank you so much and God bless you all.
Thank you, sir, for your words of encouragement and illuminating ideas. You are inspiration to all of us. Thank you once again. Now we come to a webinar. We're going to start a webinar lectures. So, the moreover, as the COVID-19 crisis potentially inflict long-lasting emotional trauma and disturb the psychological well-being of people, it will ultimately affect the comfortability level within the organizations. In addition to imposing severe stress on individual from the perspective of macro level, this pandemic has also ruined the psychology of sustainability. The aim of this webinar is to stimulate dialogue related to the impact of coronavirus disease on the psychology of human life and mental health. In view of this, for today's session, we have three speakers with us. Professor K.N. Bhatt, keynote speaker from J.B. Pant Social Science Institute, Central University of Allahabad, Prayagraj, India. Remco Van Centine, former director of Chemling Consultants, Perth, Australia. Dr. Sister Prisca, a renowned psychologist and counselor, will be joining us from Rome, Italy. So before we start the session, we would like to inform all the participants that you will have the opportunity to submit text questions which will be addressed at the end of the presentation. At this point, I would like to introduce our keynote speaker, Professor K.N. Bhatt. He is a professor of economics at J.B. Pant Social Science Institute, Central University of Allahabad, Prayagraj, India. Professor Bhatt has specialization in environmental economics, social development, and corporate social responsibility. He obtained PhD from University of Allahabad. He has directed and co-authored 25 research projects sponsored and funded by international and national organizations. He has published 44 research papers in journals and edited volumes and 11 authored edited books. He is executive editor, academic editor, member editorial board, reviewer of 9 international journals. He has extensively traveled around the world. He is associate member of Hydro-Quebec Institute for the Environment, Development and Society. Today he is going to share on the topic psychological impact of COVID-19 crisis, migrant workers and school children in the context. We are pleased to welcome you, sir. He will be sharing with us his expert opinion. Now over to you, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Distinguished panelists, respected chief guest, Allahabad School of Education faculty, all organizers. Thank you very much for making me part of this meet. Especially thanks to Professor Sister Marian. Friends, what I'm going to do is I'll little bit introduce the topic, little bit focus on global crisis. As the topic recited, the plight of migrants and the trauma of students, school-going children, and finally, I would like to conclude. Friends, this generation has never seen a crisis of this magnitude. Any individual, living individual of previous century and this century, we have never seen this crisis. This pandemic, the word quarantine, unusual times, definition of normalcy had changed. Routine livelihoods disrupted, loneliness, depression, alcoholism, drug use, self-harm, suicides, and all such traumatic conditions we are observing all around the world. This is the time testing psychological resilience of masses. Restlessness and irritability is visible from all around. Sleep disorders and panic. Closed borders, lockdown. All economic activity disrupted. At the outset, I would like to highlight one fact of life. That is, this is basically, as being observed from around the world, an urban disease. Rural has not failed us, particularly in India. Philosophers has indicated in their renowned writings, cities will be one day the grave of modern civilization. These words are in front of us, and we all are realizing what this disorder is leading to. Friends, in past, historically, if we speak of the plague virus, way back 6th to 8th century, in Roman Empire, 2 centuries continuously, as the records suggest, killed around 100 million, 10 crore people. Plague in Athens for 4 years, 426 to 430 BC, killed 1 lakh people. in that period. It led to decline of Athenian democracy. Black Death England 1348 wiped out 1/3 of its villages. But 100 years back around, Spanish flu 1820, it came back in 3 waves, killed 4.3 crore, 43 million people around the world. Some estimates suggest that 4 crore, 40 million people alone were killed in India. I'm highlighting this, how long this psychological disorder, how long this depression, how long this pandemic will continue, nobody has any idea till date. We all are fighting this from around the world. Friends, we have 3 types of crisis today. Not only this pandemic, we have one ecological crisis, we have crisis of global capitalist order, global capitalist, neo-capitalist order, which is disrupting the social sector programs and welfare activities, the health sector, health security, which we have seen from the richest countries even, from Europe, from Italy, Spain, USA, whose health systems are considered as one of the best in the world. And third crisis is this biological crisis. If I speak further of some historical fact, First World War brought massive global changes, and Europe became the hub of wealth creation. Second World War shifted the wealth creation to USA. US became the hegemon and the wealth creator of the world, superpower of the world. And this third crisis of such magnitude, even it has infected 190 countries, greater than even World War II. What it will lead to, what type of global changes will appear, nobody has any idea. I quickly come to the trauma of migrant workers in such situation. Friends, India has a total workforce of 461 million people, 46.5 crore workers, out of a total population of 135 crores. That means dependent population is 900 million. And 460 million are the earning hands, workforce, and 900 million are the dependents. Friends, out of this, around 60 million people are estimated to be the interstate migrants. And the hub of these migrants comes from Uttar Pradesh and Bihar. 37% of the total migrants come from these 2 places. And mostly, yes, out of our total workforce, 460 million, 90% is the informal sector. We have no records of these workers. Therefore, there is complete chaos counting the number of aspirant reverse migrants. How many are still there? How many want to come back? How many are these migrants? Mostly, these workers are recruited by the contractors, chain of contractors, and they are exploited at the place of their work. Friends, lockdown compounded their problems. Now I tell you a small story. What would be the psychological state of mind of a story that I am going to tell you of Sri Akhand Kumar, a 34-year-old man working in Ludhiana in a textile factory, starts back home to Allahabad on foot with 2 children and his wife, and travels around 900 kilometers back to Allahabad. And back home, he has no earning asset to fall back. He has no land to fall back upon. Second story, globally highlighted now, a young girl putting her sick father on her bicycle back and traveling around 1,000 kilometers from Gurgaon to Darbhanga, Bihar. So these are the traumatic conditions. Fact remains, at destination, these migrants are lowly paid. These migrants has no identities. Therefore, they are not part of the government subsidy, government programs, government welfare schemes. But however, back home, they have their identity. They have their ration cards. They are part of the public distribution system. Staying back for long duration without money in the pockets, with families, and 10,000 rupee a month, wife and 2 children surviving in a city, there is no need to highlight the psychological traumatic conditions these people must be facing. Friends, what is the way out? The way out for these migrants, normally, these are the internal migrants, but externally also we have around, I tell you the data, 1.7 crore, 17 million external migrants working in other countries, foreign countries. And in 2017, this was the estimate. And around 4 crore, 400,000 migrants are unskilled internationally. Now, their traumatic conditions in their countries is another story to tell. Through Vande Bharat mission, by air and sea routes, they are being brought back by the government of India. And around 70,000 are evacuated from 31 countries from around the world. And friends, Indian economy, any economy has 2 sides, supply side and demand side. At supply side, these silent workers, invisible workers, are part of the manufacturing producers. That is supply side. And at demand side, they are sending a lot of remittances back home. That creates the demand side. And this all is disrupted now. Our urban industries are completely disrupted out of labor force. I have finding of a study in Bundelkhand region, a dry region in Bundelkhand, where agricultural activities are minimum. 150 of these migrant workers interviewed reported that 70% will not go back to their places. Similar studies are being conducted. Things will become very clear. What will happen to these urban industries in future is uncertain. Way out is, government is coming out with MSMEs package. 3 lakh crore, 300,000 crores package. And for agriculture, similar package is announced for agriculture. Our agriculture has not failed us. If we can provide jobs to these people as per their skill base, that will be the solution. That will be the governance solution, policy solution for these migrants. And we have a scheme, Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme. We call it MNREGA, GP. MNREGP, for MNREGP, 100,000 crore is now, 40,000 additional, 40,000 crore additional is released. And in UP, we are hearing that they are being provided immediate employment. And this is basically an employment guarantee scheme and asset creation scheme. So friends, now I a little bit focus on the plight of students. Children and adolescents around the globe are 1.6 billion people in 190 countries. And 90%, this data is 90% of the school-age children, as per the UNESCO estimates. They are now confined to their homes. Schools are closed around. Their irritability, their anxiousness, their tensions and their stress rise in domestic violence, and not allowed, and no access to online education to majority of our students. Majority. We are talking of the urban convent public school students. Now I give you a small story. I completed a project for International Labour Organization, and I studied the plight of child labor and how the child labor category students are provided normally in all primary schools in India, rural schools. In India, the situation is like this. I studied 32 schools in Firozabad district in 2004. The situation is not much improved now as well. Teacher-taught ratio. For one teacher, there were 85 students. If I calculate the availability of rooms for children, in a small room of 135, small room of 10 by 12 feet, 135 students are supposed to be seated as per their enrollment records. This is virtually impossible for anybody. And the teacher is demigod, not a teacher, super god, demigod. Why I say this? I say this teacher teaches at the same time 3-4 classes and 4-5 subjects to these 3-4 classes. This we call, Sister Marian understands, multi-grade teaching. And majority of these children are faced with pull and push factors. They are pulled to the schools because of their children's aspirations, their parents' aspirations. They feel that they will get some education at these schools, but they are pushed back too because of this kind of archival system, this kind of uninteresting and education system, and our compulsions in our schools. So I am talking of these students. I have seen relapse to illiteracy syndrome is very high. Once these children are out of school for the last 2-3 months and will remain how long out of school, we have no idea what will be the plight of their learning levels. Otherwise also, they are below minimum learning levels as defined by the Dubey Committee of NCERT. 55% of them are below learning levels. So whatever learning they have now very, very poor learning levels. I'm speaking of these kind of children. I'm also speaking of worst affected children are those who are having mental health problems. So friends, Confucius, a Chinese philosopher, has told about the education. I quote, if your plan is for 1 year, plant rice. If your plan is for 10 years, plant trees. If your plan is for 100 years, educate your children. Similar is the social sector programs, health security. In India, health security is very, very poor. Now, as the coronavirus unfolds, we are watching the actual situation of our health system that is unfolding in Mumbai and Delhi. Till date, as per our population ratio, our patients are relatively less, but the way they are increasing, how long it will continue is very difficult to say. To conclude, friends, I would say India can survive this with an optimistic note. I conclude, India may survive this, will survive this pandemic if it focuses on its own strength. Another fear is what will be the shape of deglobalization, reverse globalization? What will be the position of self-reliant economies around the globe, which are being planned? Within these neoliberal situations, what will be the health security systems? What shape of education that is for our future? That is for what is the situation of sanitation? All these systems are existing side by side. We need to address all these. Only governance, good governance, will lead us to survive and to come out of this pandemic. With this optimistic note, I again thank friends. Thank you very much. I hope I have not taken enough time. 20 minutes was given. I hope I'm within time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. We are grateful for time and effort you took to share your thoughts and experiences with us. We appreciate your ability to present the subject in such an interesting way. We thank you for your valuable contribution, sir. It was informative and enlightening to all of us. Thank you, sir. Sir, there are some questions from the participants, and we would like you to address it.
Yeah.
One question from Debojit Goswami, Assistant Professor from Public Administration, Netaji Subhash Open University. He has asked that what are the researchers' responsibility in investigating life of urban margin during COVID-19 pandemic?
Educationists, teachers are always teachers. Teachers make this society. Teachers make the future of any country. During emergency also, we all must share. We talk of corporate social responsibility. I talk of academic social responsibility. So we must share our academic social responsibility. We have the technology now. We should reach them through online. We should make people aware. In India, most of the people in the slum areas do not understand. They don't have access to modern gadgets. We need to educate them. How? You just understand what is your local condition. Our doctors are treating the patients. Our health workers, our police personnel are with the patients. Why cannot be the teachers? If they educate their surroundings, their helpless population, their difficulties, they can bring back to the authorities their problems. They are hidden problems which they are shy of. That part any teacher can play. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for such a relevant answer, and hope he is satisfied with the answer. Thank you, sir, for joining us today. Thank you to everyone for participating and sharing your views. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Now, for those who have just joined us, we once again welcome to the international webinar. Now we have the second speaker with us, Remo Van Santin from Perth, Australia. Now I invite Dr. Hassan Qasim to introduce him. Over to you, Qasim sir.
Let's introduce me. Nothing's happening.
Thank you, ma'am. Very good afternoon to one and all. So Remco Van Santin is resident of Perth, Australia. He is the founder, former director, and former owner of Chemlink Private Limited, and a founder, former principal of Chemlink Consultant. He is a graduate of University of Western Australia and was Australia's chairman of Industrial Chemistry Division of RACI. An enthusiastic supporter of community empowerment, he initiated My Clean India movement in 2007, which is expressed around the country. Having studied the expression of COVID-19, Remco can contribute insight into the global management and what this pandemic means and could mean to both the individual and the society. He noted how well India has performed in its management on a per capita basis compared to other nations. This pandemic has the potential to represent a major turning point in cultural evolution. He is going to enlighten us on the topic, why, and some approaches to second tent for dealing with COVID-19. Over to you, sir. Now.
Well, good afternoon, and for our international guests in Europe, a very good morning. Namaskar to fellow panelists. I feel very privileged to be here this afternoon. And just to be straight with you, the background here is false. It is a rather drab afternoon here in Perth, and it is not quite as sunny as being projected. The scene you have is actually of my home office, and just to the side here, perhaps you can see a kangaroo or two that sometimes comes and visit us. I just wanted to put a little bit of a human side to me. I have been many times to India, and I feel very privileged to be able to make a contribution here this afternoon. Now, I want to start in 1990s, in France, in fact. And France in the 1990s was subject to terrorist attacks. And you know what happened is they started something that's become an international phenomenon. And that is to have a two-tent system for terrorism, for any trauma, 2 tents. One to deal, as we have at the moment with COVID. We all seen the tents. And perhaps you have them here, I do not know. And you have a second tent. And I want to talk about the second tent, because the second tent is what this seminar is all about. And that is to deal with the psychological side of a trauma that we're all experiencing. And some of us may be very comfortable. Some of us will not be at that interface, at the actual trauma. But it is very clear, we are all affected by this traumatic event, whether it be social distancing or quarantine, we are affected. So I'd like, and I'm going to request a quick screen share. So if the screen share could be activated for me, please. No, it is still disabled for me. It is disabled. hope you can do it. You cannot help me with a screen share? We have it, thank you. All right, I'm going to show you this graph here, and I hope you can all see it. It shows the infection rate of 5 countries. And you can see at the very top is a country you barely hear of. That's Chile. It is expressed, and why I've done this is to demonstrate something, that the infection rate as presented in the media is always sensational. It is always made in numbers, but this graph is doing something. It is showing the infection rate density, the number of infections per 1 million of population. And at the top is a country you haven't heard of, Chile. Then you have Brazil. And then you can see the United States, relatively flat. Okay, then we see Germany. Notice how it has come to a peak and is now in decline. But noticeably, in particular, see India. India is still very low. It has a far more gradual increase than all the other countries. And its infection rate is perhaps a 1/5 or a 1/10 of what the other countries are. So India is doing particularly well. Now, of course, there are special factors here, and I don't want to go into the actual detail because there is something that I want to share with you following this. So I'm going to show you another graph. And this graph is of 2 countries that did not exist in '93. And that country that no longer exists is Czechoslovakia. That has been split into 2 countries, Czechia and Slovakia. And you can see now the graph. Here at the top, you can see Czechia. And again, this is the infection rate per million of population. And at the side here is its now split off country, Slovakia. Note how it peaked and has come down sharply and is now flat. Now, why is it that 2 countries that were once one are now so different? There is something I'd like to introduce as a proposal, as a hypothesis, and that is the following graph might explain this. Because we know about the infection rate of COVID. We know how what the so-called R factor is. And once you can know that, with modeling exercises, you can show how many people will be infected based on social separation. Now, this is the next graph I'm going to show you. This is a graph that's been done by the University of Sydney. And the significance of this graph is this, that if you have less than 70% of the people not practicing physical separation, social distancing, quarantine, call it what you will. If it's less than 70%, you will get this increase. Can you see this reddish brown line? It will increase. However, if you get separation of more than 70% of the people respecting it, and in my country here in Australia, it is about 90%. And we have virtually eliminated the infections. We are talking less than perhaps 5 or 10 per day. So anyway, I will stop screen sharing and I will hopefully come back if, now let's go back. Hopefully we'll come back to, I'm sorry, this will take a second. I want to come back to, Are you able to disengage the screen sharing for me? If not, I will have to leave it. Okay, now the point I want to make is the aspect of leadership, to have a cohesive leadership. And this is what some of the successful countries have, notably in New Zealand. They have this Jacinda Ardern who is promoting and is consistent with the whole country. In America, you have a president who is promoting the country to go back and is almost discouraging social separation. So let's get back to the tent discussion. At the moment, worldwide, 440,000 people have died and about 8 million are infected. That's at the moment. And outside of wartime, And outside of the Spanish flu in 1918, there has been no precedent to the number of lives lost within such a short period of time. It has challenged our belief system and it's challenged our expectations of life. So in India, the numbers are perhaps only 9,000 people that have lost their lives, and 340,000 are suffering, and 170,000 have recovered. But it is still causing a trauma. So what we can say today is that with 2.6 billion people around the world in some kind of lockdown, this is the largest psychological experiment we've ever had. It is extraordinary. It's without precedent. And psychologists are saying that this is the second epidemic. It will lead to burnouts and stress-related absenteeism. And that is going to be the most pronounced long-term consequence of COVID-19. And you have to ask yourself, what is the long-term emotional, psychological cost of such a sudden and seismic disruption to our life? And you know, it's dented the faith in science and medicine, and it's shaken our comfort in the world. So we're now in a situation where we have had a quarantine for some time, but we've had a precedent. We've had previous expressions. We've had SARS. And what that can say, and what the current surveys are showing, that of the parents that are quarantined, something like 28% of the parents at home with their children are warranted to have a diagnosis of trauma-related mental health disorder. Hospital staff, that is about at least 10%, are reporting highly depressive symptoms, and they're likely to suffer for another 3 years after having been quarantined. Healthcare workers will likely show long-term risks for alcohol abuse, self-medication, and long-lasting avoidance behavior. This is something that is happening and going to happen. We have to expect, even for those that are returning to work, a high absenteeism and burnout. So what we're dealing with is trauma. And you know, trauma is something, it's that feeling of being overwhelmed by an event that you cannot process because there is no precedent in your experience, what we're going through now. There is simply nothing to compare to COVID. And so without prior experience, the typical response to trauma is to shut down and just exist. We are entering a period of a new normal. We think we're okay. We may feel okay, but we're in a new normal. And remember that the World Health Organization has released a bulletin, and they said what is likely to happen. There will be levels of loneliness, depression, harmful alcoholic and drug use, and self-harm, or even suicidal behavior. And these are all expected to rise. And already in Britain, under the National Health Scheme, around half the doctors and 40% of the nurses are suffering from stress-related psychiatric illnesses. So it's a perfect storm. And the significant thing is, only when the world becomes safer and more predictable, it's only then when people may feel a need to reach out. They will not reach out now. It's only when they start to feel safer. So what are the signs of trauma? Well, there are things like anxiety, panic attack, depression, suicide rates, of course. And some of the other specialists will talk of that with some greater detail. But there are stages of trauma. The first one is time zero. You know when time zero is? That's the moment the trauma ends. It's after the time when people are starting to feel more relaxed. They will feel that at that point, they will start to feel edgy and on guard. They'll have sleeplessness, irritability, and acute anxiousness. So this is at the time when the trauma is starting to end, when the lockdowns are released. The second stage is where people develop flashbacks and nightmares. the third stage, and that's expected to affect 1/10 of those. And that is a kind of prolonged shutdown. People dissociate from their feelings and go numb. And that can go on for years. So, COVID. As I said, the default now is that it's become a sort of a mental and physical fatigue, and we feel normal, and we seem to be coping on the surface. But underneath, people are struggling. In the first week of the COVID pandemic, nurses and doctors felt not only overwhelmed, but threatened and unsafe. They had anxiety about contracting the virus and passing it on to their family members. So for them, the workplace and the home have become places that are unsafe and uncertain. In the second pandemic that is evolving, the second one, it may be those that have been heralded as the heroes, the health workers, the most vulnerable among the key workers, and those with those on low incomes who are at the face of working in tight conditions. The people that we have clapped, these are the ones that will suffer the most. They've done surveys already, and they're showing that about a quarter of the people having had an experience 150% increase in stress. They're at high risk of long-term absenteeism from work due to illness and burnout. And you can expect, even for those that go back to work, that their productivity will fall by up to 1/3. So what we're talking about is a massive, subtle change that's evolving. But it is not only that, there is something else that's happening. And psychologists are saying this: with a threat of contagion, of infection and death, can twist our psychological response. Our day-to-day feelings, our ordinary interactions are leading to unexpected ways that we will relate. And that means that the responses are often misplaced. They could be triggered by irrelevant information. It's altering our moral decision-making and our political opinions on issues that have nothing to do with the current threat. We are being affected in a very subtle way. And what are some of the changes? And this is where they talk about a behavioral immune system. This is a sort of a primordial sort of program that's running in us. We're uncertain, we're nervous, we don't want to have, we want to protect ourselves and our families. So what happens? We become conformist, we become tribalistic, we're harshly judgmental, we become conservative, and we become careful. It's better to be safe than sorry. And we've become distrustful of strangers. And so what are some of the things that will happen? For some of us that have been hurt, and hey, I've only been talking about the physical side. What about those that have lost their businesses, who cannot work, who have no job, who have no money? They're dropped. You've heard of the Maslow hierarchy of needs. Well, we're down in the basement. These people are at the basement for survival. Priorities are being challenged. They become challenging. And even doing nothing for a lot of people is more stressful than having a really hard job. So in that process, any loss, doesn't matter what it is, it becomes far more stressful than in the past. And we've got a reduced sense of belonging, of connectedness, of openness and trust. We feel fragile. So what about in Australia? Well, they've done surveys, and at least 40% of couples are now showing a very negative change in their relationship. In distant relationships, with your friends and neighbors, it is not so significant. And of course, if you're already feeling lonely, even before COVID, you're likely to experience some really significant changes with your immediate partner, with your partner and your immediate family. It's much more severe for those sort of people. An important thing, and I'm just going to talk about quarantine, is that they've observed that if you can enroll the people, that is, promote voluntary quarantine, not just enforced quarantine, but voluntary quarantine, it's associated with much less distress and there are much fewer long-term complications. And that is why it's so important to have a leader, to have a supportive media that enroll the people into the need for the quarantine, to make it clear, like in that earlier graph I showed, that social distancing is in your interest. And of course, that's very difficult for those who need to work. But, you know, it is important to create a feeling this is necessary. So it is very important that the quarantine is no longer than required. It's important that we have a clear rationale being explained and appeal to the altruism and the benefits for people, and provide clear information about the protocols, and of course, ensure sufficient supplies of personal protection equipment. Leadership, I hinted at that earlier with for example, with Czechia and Slovakia, but you could also look at Chile and Argentina, separated by the Andes, with very different rates of infection. Leadership is so important. It cannot be overstated. And during the war, I have Winston Churchill, with all the criticism that you may have of this man, he did one thing. He enrolled the people in Britain. And when the war broke out, the leaders knew or anticipated that there would be great trauma in the country. And they purchased all of these buildings around the outskirts of London. And they were going to house the people that would be psychologically traumatized by the bombing that they anticipated. You know what? That most of the buildings were not needed, because Winston Churchill enrolled the people into the fact that it was their war, and it became part of their stiff upper lip syndrome, the contribution of Churchill. So are there positive outcomes from COVID? Well, we are now starting to see some negatives. We're seeing the negatives, and despite that some leaders are putting health second, there are some positive sides to it. We're seeing a revolution in the fact with this George Floyd, with the Black Lives Matter movement. That's extraordinary. And we're seeing the statues falling. We're seeing questions about the police departments. They're talking about defunding the police and making them more community spirited. And people are saying, looking and saying, well, maybe being busy, which is about feeling important, but saying, well, maybe it is not so important. And busyness was just a sort of an anesthetic to feeling and experiencing this moment. And we're becoming more community oriented. We're starting to see doctors taking charge when the management didn't have a clue. So we're starting to see some shifts. Perhaps we're learning about the fragility of life. We're seeing the cost of our living to the impact and the quality of the air and the water. And you've seen it. You can see the Himalayas today. You can see how much clearer Delhi is today. And you've seen images of what once were polluted waters of Venice. We're seeing the consequence of our lifestyle. And that perhaps there are opportunities for working and recreating and connecting. I'm getting wind-up signals here from my wife, who's sitting here on the side. So I'm going to have to slowly wind up, and just to remind us that so the things that we can do now is get informed, get the right information. Remember that we're humans and vulnerable who can cooperate. It's also, and this is an important thing, it's the unhealthy who are dying more so than the aged. It's a correlation, but in the end, it's our comorbidities that are important. So it's important to keep our weight down, to stay healthy, to eat well. We need to stay engaged and do enjoyable things. We have to take the moment and develop a lifestyle that's more present in the current moment. And we have to look hard at some of our aberrant behaviors and expressed attitudes. So the pandemic that we're experiencing now could be looked upon as a portal, a gateway between one world and another. We can choose to continue with our prejudices, our avarices, our dying rivers and polluted skies, or we can step through lightly with little baggage and help co-create another, better, healthier world. And it's going to be up to us to develop a physical attitude, to look at our well-being, recognize that being overweight leads to diabetes, leads to heart disease, and these are the things, the comorbidities that increase our risk of death by at least a factor of 10. And to conclude, also watch your mental health and look around and be more forgiving, both of yourself and those around us. These are not normal times, but we can prepare for the time after this pandemic. And so I conclude with that, and I think this is an extremely valuable and important conference, because we could become too complacent, too focused on death and illness, and not take into account that that we as individuals are being affected, even if we are comfortable, and around us there are people that are challenged. Look out for them. Dhanyavad.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your valuable knowledge regarding psychological impact, consequences of quarantine in reducing the rate of transmission, regarding the signs and stages of trauma and positive outcome of COVID-19. And I think it will be valuable for all of us. There are a few questions from the participant. First question from Pratyanshi Devedi. How we can identify about our mental health at this time of crisis, and how we can take care of our mental health? Yes, sir.
Yes, well, thank you for that question. It's an excellent question. I'm not an expert, and some of the psychologists are probably better skilled. I tried to give an overview, but the fact that the question was directed to me, thank you. I think what I have learned, it is very powerful to observe yourself and be alert. Be alert for your overreaction to a situation. Be alert that if you react over the top when somebody says something, and even my wife, I have such times when my wife says something and I think, oh, why did I overreact? And I think it's just observe yourself, watch yourself, and just be alert, just be sensitive that we are living in a time that we have no precedent, no experience. This is new. And I think just watch yourself.
Thank you, sir. One more question by Mobani Biswas. How would you see the future of a would-be teacher after post-COVID?
Of a school teacher?
Of a would-be teacher.
Would-be teacher, yes. Yeah, well, we're certainly entering an era of more remote virtual networks, and we're having here a conference as an example, and we are still in the modality of having direct contact, at school, where we have traditional schools. Whether we have more virtual teaching remains to be seen, and and education is more than just words, and it's all about relationships. I thank you for the question, but I feel that I'm not so versed, and I hope that question perhaps be directed to a psychologist. I think it can, however, I think in terms of the school children, I think it could make them a little bit uncomfortable to go to school and to be forced to separate. And hopefully children will be educated to feel that it is just a process. It is not going to be a template for the future.
Thank you very much, sir. So over to Prem ma'am.
Thank you, Remco sir. We truly appreciate your efforts for the outstanding presentation. It was very interesting to hear you. And I believe what you said will have significant impact of many of us. Thank you once again, sir. Now, I would like to introduce our third speaker of the day, Dr. Sister Prisca from Rome, Italy. She's a renowned psychologist and counselor. She's an excellent educationist. She has a teaching experience, able administrator, a motivational speaker who has conducted many seminars and workshops. She has a master's degree in psychology from the University of Allahabad, advanced 3-year PG diploma in psychodynamic counseling. She has a doctorate degree in guidance and counseling from London. As a renowned psychologist, she taught counseling skills for 5 years, and she is now at present in Rome. She has traveled widely and had organizational experience in intercultural settings. She will be sharing with us her expert views on the topic Unlock Your Inner World in the Age of COVID-19 Pandemic, a time of stress and grief. We are very grateful for her presence among us today. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Sister Priska. Over to you, Sister.
Thank you very much, Dr. Prem Prabha. I just want to say good afternoon to everybody who are there. I know the time is different in different places, but in India it is afternoon. I am delighted to be a part of this program in my old familiar town, although virtually. I would like to express my gratitude to the Vice Chancellor, the Pro Vice Chancellor, the directors, registrars, joint registrars, deans, heads of departments, Professor Dr. Sister Marian Matthew, the Dean and Convener, the organizing committee, the panelists, and participants, especially those from overseas. Right now, I'm in Rome to give you a situational aroma. And we are in phase 3 of the lockdown relaxation from today, that is 15th June. Now the cinemas will open, but with restrictions. Maximum number allowed, 200 people. All should wear masks throughout the show and no popcorns. This means very few people are going to come. And the companies, the cinema companies are not very much wanting to show because they would want more people to come. So this is the physical background here in Rome. And also we are wearing masks wherever we go out. There is physical distance to be observed when you go to shops and supermarkets. When we travel by bus, we wear gloves, we wear masks. And this is for protection for ourselves and also taking care of our social responsibility that we do not infect anybody else. So in this setting, I just like to say something on a lighter note. There was once a book published, and as you all know, when books come out, we look in the front page and we also look at the back cover. At the back cover of this book was written, this book contains new and good ideas. The new ideas are not good, the good ideas are not new. So I believe our internet is exploding with ideas. Our newspapers and TV channels are exploding with news. And therefore, do I need to give information? This was the question I began to ask myself. Therefore, I would like this be a reflection. So within the current context of COVID-19 pandemic, I will attempt to share some of my reflections on this health emergency, both physical and mental. The WHO called the current outbreak of novel coronavirus, COVID-19, a public health emergency of international concern. So it's a time when people experience isolation within and without, changes in familiar ways of living, suffering losses of unimaginable proportions, loss of loved ones, loss of jobs, loss of financial security, loss of the certainty, loss of control, nothing to hold on to. So it brings along fear, insecurity, doubts, anxieties, and a whole host of vulnerabilities threatening our mental health and sense of well-being. So within this context, we want to do our reflection. So could I ask for sharing a screen, please? Oh no. So I have my title, Unlocking Your Inner World in the Age of COVID-19 Pandemic, a Time of Stress and Grief. I would like you to take a good look at this picture.
Sister, come to full screen.
Ah, okay. Sorry. Is that okay? I think it is full screen. Okay. Let us dwell on the world. Is that okay now? Is it full screen?
Not yet, sister.
Not yet? Yeah.
F5.
Okay.
Sister, press F5.
Okay.
Yeah, now
Is
it's
this
okay. Now it's okay, sister.
All
Yes.
right. Thank you so much. Okay. So let us dwell on the worlds, unlocking our inner world. Our inner world is a whole universe, a whole galaxy of people whom we have met or even heard about. Now you must be wondering why I put this picture here. If you look carefully at this picture, you will see the guide of this tour team is saying, pointing his finger, if you observe carefully near that hill, behind that large tree, you can see a lion. At the same time, the lion is there just next to them, if you look down. Now, this was the situation, the current situation of Corona. There were people going into denial, not in my country, not in my town, not in my village. I am not going to get infected. I am not old, I am young and healthy. The old people in the care homes, yes, it might affect them. So this is one of the psychological mechanisms we employ in order to protect ourselves from the threat of something which is disastrous. So that's why this picture is there. So as we reflect on our inner world, this may be one thing to look at. Am I into denial? Where am I? Okay. Now the next picture. So, did you ever think that a time will come when a security guard will be taking a temperature of a doctor? Now, this is what we have been seeing in many airports. If you watch TV, you saw many airports having number of people testing temperature of people who come, especially those people, the migrants in other countries being brought, and all were being tested. And so here we have something of what is really happening in terms of role reversal. We are all in it together. So this is the irony of things. The security guard taking temperature of a doctor. So here at this time, we have reversal of roles, status, as we are all in it together. We all experienced a loss of normalcy as most of the world went into lockdown. Children and parents together at home, long hours, not able to go out, some working from home, some not working at all, parents experiencing frustration with the demands of children, some child asking, help me with my online class, another one saying, mommy, give me a snack. So it goes on, and especially the women, the mothers, having this every day, day in and day out, going through this frustration. You also know that there were conflicts, there are conflicts, spouses experiencing conflicts, domestic violence happening, physical and verbal abuse, and in some places, sexual abuse, fear, trauma. We also saw pictures of persons in hospital wards, the persons in the mask and protective gear, living forcefully confined to the four walls, gasping for air. Not many were lucky enough to get a ventilator service. And we know, all over the world, so many people have been suffering and are suffering still. And it will go on for some more time. As you know, in India, the peaking is going to happen in July, August. A lot of people are suffering. And also today, it is in context that the UN World Abuse Awareness Day of Elders, Abuse of Elders Awareness Day is today. According to WHO estimates, 1 in 6 people aged over 60 suffer from abuse. So that's where we are with regard to the, I want to move on to the next. So we want to further reflect. So people are, as we heard from the previous speaker too, we are going through anxiety. And for us, it is important to know what these signs are so that when we observe people, when we get in touch with them, when we listen to their anxious voices, we'll be able to help them in some way with our empathy, with our understanding. So what are the signs of anxiety we might notice within ourselves in order to become self-aware and within others? Persistent worry or feeling overwhelmed by emotions. There may be excessive worry about a number of concerns like health, finance, safety. Also a general sense that something bad is going to happen. So this anxiety is so alive. There is restlessness and irritability, people getting annoyed for small things, big things, for all sorts of things. Difficulty in concentrating, as somebody mentioned earlier about students. Concentration, impossible. People of all walks of life and at every level can suffer sleeplessness, sleep problems. So these are some signs of anxiety. If we move on to the next one. Also, sometimes you will see people panicking, having signs of panic attack. And panic attacks shows itself in sweating, trembling, shortness of breath, or a feeling of choking, a pounding heart or a rapid heartbeat, and feeling of dread. And this often happens suddenly, without any warning. It creates fear about when the next episode will occur, causes change, and it restricts a person's normal activities. Then we go through the signs of depression. Number of speakers talked about depression. And depression is so rampant in our society, especially these days. We have already just heard about the suicide of one of our actors. Why? Suicide does not happen overnight. We will see that later. Depression leads to suicide. So depression symptoms, lack of interest and pleasure in daily activities, significant weight loss or weight gain. Sometimes people gain weight because in order to escape the anxiety within, they might give in to comfort eating, for example. The inability to do anything physical because feeling sluggish or lazy, lack of energy or an inability to concentrate, feeling of worthlessness, recurrent thoughts of death or suicide. So lots of thoughts go on, there is no meaning in life, why continue? And therefore, the next thing is, because this long-standing depression is not taken care of, it will lead to suicide. And these people might talk about dying or harming oneself, might speak about very indirectly sometimes. If you hear anyone talking about taking life, even if jokingly or very indirectly, we need to take that seriously. recent loss through death, divorce, or separation can be a factor which can make people so depressed that they want to commit suicide. Loss of interest in friends, in hobbies, activities previously enjoyed. Changes happen in personality. Person begin to become very sad, withdrawn, irritable, and these are all causing anxiety. There may be changes in behavior, sleep patterns, and eating habits. Behavior may be erratic, harming oneself sometimes, harming other people, low self-esteem, feelings of worthlessness, guilt or self-hatred. I don't feel worthy. Sometimes you see people who suffer self-hatred, especially victims of abuse, feel I am not good enough, I am not worthy, I am responsible for what happened to me. So this kind of feelings go on. So no hope for the future, believing things will never get better or nothing will change, and therefore they seek to commit suicide. Now, another thing we want to look at is the loss, and the loss following death, the loss following finances, insecurity of living conditions, the homelessness, a whole lot of things. So when we grieve for anything, we go through stages. These 5 stages of grief were given to us by Elisabeth Kubler-Ross, and these 5 stages do not go in linear progression. May come to one stage, go back to it again, and so on. So these are the 5 stages. I think most people are familiar with it, but I'll just run through them. The first is denial. When a person experiences grief, let's say I lost someone whom I love very much. The first stage is a numbness, a shock, and denial that no, the person is here. Nothing has happened. This is an unconscious mechanism helping me to deal with the sudden news of death of loved ones. Then the next stage, gradually the conscious takes over and I begin to argue with God, with myself, with others. Why me? Why do I have to suffer? I am a good person. I have not done anything wrong. Why is God punishing me? This kind of thoughts some people have. Is this my fate to suffer? I miss this person very much. So that is a bargaining stage. And I can't forgive myself that this has happened to me. And I can't forgive God either. And I experienced a lot of anger. Why was I not there when this happened, for example? There may be pathological guilt which can produce this sort of anger. And then there is this stage of depression where a person becomes very, very sad, very withdrawn. You saw all the previous symptoms of depression. All this a person may go through. And it takes time till this person can come to a stage of acceptance. And for that, we need help. Most of the time, we have people to whom we unlock ourselves. I was talking about unlocking our inner world. This is the time when we unlock our inner world to someone, we are able to accept this grief. So that's another stage. Along with these 5 stages of grief, Dr. Kessler, a co-author with Elisabeth Kubler-Ross, also introduced this anticipatory grief. Anticipatory grief is grieving a loss before it happens. A lingering sense that more loss is still to come. There is this fearful anticipation. The person is on edge. It's not always clear exactly why. I don't feel comfortable. I don't know why. Feel angry at things I can't control. And at the same time, I am resigning to the worst case scenario. Well, I can't do anything. I feel helpless. And I find myself withdrawing or avoiding others. I feel completely exhausted. So these are the results of anticipatory grief. Then in psychology, it's a famous concept, the Zeigarnik effect. Always unfinished business surfaces. Even in ordinary life, if we leave anything unfinished, all the time this worry is, hey, I have not done this. I have still something more to do. I haven't answered that letter. I have not responded to the email which I so much want to do. So many things unfinished, and unfinished things surface and they worry us. So in the inner world, in our psychological world too, there are lots of experiences which are unfinished. From our early days, from infancy to childhood to school age to adolescence to adulthood, a lot of things are not fully dealt with, not fully processed. There are a lot of unfinished business. And in times of trauma, grief, disaster, like COVID anxieties, these kind of unfinished businesses can surface. I may suddenly remember a very sad experience I had in my early days, for example, at this time, and I don't know from where it is appearing. So incomplete tasks, all disappear. Now, this concept was given to us by a Russian psychiatrist and psychologist, Bluma Zygarnik. It plays an important role in a person's mental health. Unless we are able to open our inner world, unlock it, and able to share and become free of this unfinished business, make it to come to a closure, it is going to worry us again and again. So, incomplete tasks, particularly those with negative consequences, often lead to frequent and stressful, intrusive thoughts. It may reduce sleep, it will promote anxiety, it can deplete a person's mental and emotional resources, possibly even to contributing maladaptive behaviors. We are in a time when a lot of carers are in the forefront at this time of COVID. There are the medical professionals, doctors, nurses, paramedics. There are the defense personnel helping out in the emergency situation, police, security guards, all sorts of people are out there caring. Compassion fatigue is something that the carers experience when they have to deal with so many people who are suffering. Even if we are not right there, even listening and hearing to trauma can bring about compassion fatigue. So there is this definition given by Charles Figley of compassion fatigue, that it's a natural consequence of stress resulting from caring and helping traumatized or suffering people. The outward signs are displays of stress resulting from continuous giving care to others. Compassion fatigue is a secondary traumatic disorder. The previous speaker talked about post-traumatic disorder in the sense, after this COVID, lot more of symptoms of post-trauma are going to appear. So here now, at present, we are seeing secondary traumatic disorder, or instead of PTSD, we say STSD. So sometimes thought of as a special form of burnout. Compassion fatigue affects people in the caring profession, doctors, nurses, counselors, ministers, and so on, pastors who do deal with people. I remember an incident in 2004 when we had this very traumatic experience of the tsunami in the south of India. We had one of our Bollywood actors going with a group in order to listen to the people who had lost everything, lost houses, lost their family members, lost all that they cherished in life. So this group went to listen to them. And one of these Bollywood actors collapsed there and then and was admitted into hospital, had to be treated because he was suffering compassion fatigue. So this results from caring to the point that you are drained of empathy, sometimes referred to as secondary traumatic stress disorder, as I already said. This occurs even after experiencing a great deal of energy and compassion to others over an extended period of time. It can also occur due to unrealistic expectations. Sometimes we feel we can do everything, we can heal everyone, we can also bring successfully everything to an end. Not true. We are not, first of all, indispensable. I remember reading a very interesting little poem about people who think that they are indispensable, that they can cure everything, that they can heal everything. And it says, take a bucket of water, put your fist into it, and the hollow that is made is the measure of your indispensability. So nobody is actually indispensable. Compassion fatigue is also a feeling of being used up at the end of every day. Have no life outside the place of work, whether it's the office, the clinic, the hospital, wherever we are engaged in giving our compassionate services. So we have given so much that there is nothing left to give. So in this understanding of what is going on in our world, we need to unlock this. We need to help others unlock their inner world also. So in case of fatigue, sluggishness, and burnout, remember what the airlines tell us when we fly. Put your own mask first and then help others. I think it is so relevant for us now. Prioritize self-care and also think of your social responsibility. Listen and establish connections. Get people out of their denial stage by counseling. We may even have to advise people to take professional help and that it is available and that we have the information that it is available, what we call reference counseling. Provide professional care digitally. In our time, we cannot do person-to-person counseling. We cannot give therapy sessions. We simply have to be satisfied with making use of all the digital platforms that we can use in order to come to help people to unlock their inner world. So I would like to conclude with this last quotation. The greatest opportunity for managing people's fears during health emergencies lies in restoring connections with each other. Today, we are called to rebuild a sense of community and the ties that engage us together as human beings. Now, this was a conclusion drawn by a study done by Catholic University of the Sacred Heart in Piacenza, Italy. We are also thinking in these days, we so much miss the physical strokes, the hugging, the touching, which has got very health-promoting effects. But after post-COVID, I think that is something which we need to think of. The therapeutic effect of human touch. I just read the other day, Dr. Joe Rock, a Cleveland clinical psychologist, says that hugs have therapeutic effect. It decreases high blood pressure, especially in menopausal women. The therapeutic effect also comes in terms of decreasing the release of cortisol, which is a stress hormone. So the hormone that is released when people are given affectionate hugs is called oxytocin. And this causes a reduction in blood pressure and it also reduces the stress hormone. So we know that, especially here in Italy, people are so much affectionate, so much expressive, and this is very helpful for people who have been experiencing trauma and want to unlock their inner world so that they can be free and back to internal freedom. So I would like to thank all of you very much for this opportunity as well as for listening to me. Thank you so much. And now over to you for any questions. Okay.
Many thanks, sister, for addressing us. Thanks for excellent presentation. And your message was exactly what we needed to hear. Thank you so much, sister. And sister, we have some questions. We'll go ahead and take some time for questions now.
Okay.
Now, Muhammad Arif has asked that how is it possible to deal with depression in this situation of crisis?
Yes. It's a very good question and a very relevant question, but a very difficult thing to do at this time. As you already saw, there are symptoms of depression. We may notice symptoms within ourselves and even within other people. Now, we know that what is available is only digital platforms now. We cannot go to a person, sit with her and listen to her or him. We cannot in any way give them a chance of giving or contributing our empathy to them. That is difficult. Now, if the depression has become so severe that they will need psychiatric medical help, then I believe the only thing that we can give is a reference to some psychiatrist who may be available. The problem is emergency medicines need to be available. Otherwise, it's going to be, and person cannot get any help, because certain stages they need real sedation also, so that they are able to sleep. So that is very extremely depressed people. But if you find that someone would surely open up, and if you have the skills to help this person open up, maybe you can invite her to a personal conversation. See, emailing and written messages are not helpful. For this, someone needs to hear the voice of someone else.
Yes, sister.
We cannot touch, but at least we can let this person feel the compassion in our voice, the acceptance and the empathy. So I think that's all that we can do now in this setting. But post-COVID, I suppose there are other ways of dealing with this depression. Thank you.
Thank you, sister. There is one more question from Atul Kumar Duvedi. Ask how loneliness become harmful during COVID-19, especially for old people when there is a social distancing. How this is affecting their mental health?
Yes, this has been a question I myself have been thinking about, because you see, we have got a number of people, old people, well, some in our own families, some around us, some in the places where we visit, and if we are teachers, we have also got parents of, grandparents of children, and for children, grandparents are so valuable, and distancing from them affects them so much. So what do we do? These people are experiencing loneliness. Whoever they are, whether they are old people or young people who are distanced, they cannot meet their parents, they cannot meet their friends, they cannot meet their loved ones. So it creates loneliness because the connection is missing. So the only connection, as we said earlier, the possible connection we need to engage in. The loneliness, of course, also has got another aspect to it. A lonely person is a person who feels, I am not happy engaging with myself. I am not worth. If I am a person who feel, there are resources within me, there are resources around me, I can reflect, I can get into a beautiful solitude where I can write, where I can make poetry, I can do creative things. This can help me to get out. So there is a difference between solitude and loneliness. Loneliness has no positive element in that. So I am hoping that people will discover ways of expressing themselves, either in painting, in drawing, in reading, in a conversation with others, in making phone calls, whatever it is, so that you are able to unlock your inner self, to begin to value yourself more. I think that is the answer to loneliness.
Yes, sister. Thank you. Thank you, sister. We appreciate your participation, sister. Thank you for joining us. Thank you so much, sister.
Thank you so much.
Now, I invite Dr. Samla Shunita Masi, Associate Dean and Coordinator, to summarize today's webinar and propose vote of thanks. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Prabha ma'am. Good afternoon, one and all, and namaskar. This is Shamla Sunita Masi, coordinator of today's international webinar. I would like to summarize the gist of thoughts shared by the different speakers. As we all know that Ever since COVID-19 invaded this globe, people across the world are in fear. This global health pandemic has touched every human person's life in some way or the other, forcing isolation, uncertainty, anger, anxiety, hopelessness, etc. And this, coupled with the economic meltdown, is causing a huge psychological distress. The COVID-19 pandemic is a threat to human society, both for risking a human life, ensuring economic distress, and for its invisible emotional strain. COVID-19 has created the problem to human society, particularly marginalized community in terms of fear, anxiety, and tension. Due to this COVID-19 pandemic, the immediate challenges faced by the migrant workers were related to food, shelter, loss of wages, fear of getting infected, and anxiety. And also the children, school-going children, due to this pandemic, has negative effects on children's physically and mental health, like physically less active, have much longer screen time, irregular sleep pattern, weight gain, loss of cardio, respiratory fitness, stresses such as prolonged duration fears of infection, frustration, boredom, inadequate information, lack of in-person contact with classmates, friends, teachers, etc. And then lack of personal space at home and financial loss can have ever more problematic and enduring effects on children as well as the parents. It is the need of art to address these issues to bring the children to normalcy. And ever since we can say that it is unquestionable to say that this is unquestionably a period where people are experiencing an enormous amount of stress given the large demands the situation is placing on our daily lives, that changes in our routines and structure that we typically rely on, and the uncertainty surrounding how long COVID pandemic is going to last and what the ultimate impact is going to be on our families, our communities, and our workplaces. With this, I would like to thank you all. And this is now it's the time. I would like to propose a vote of thanks. The chief guests are Pro Vice Chancellor, Academic Affairs, and Joint Registrar, Administration, Schwartz, and all distinguished keynote speakers and our lovely participants. It's my privilege to propose a vote of thanks on the first day of today's international webinar. On behalf of the entire fraternity of Allahabad School of Education, Schwartz, and on my own behalf, I would like to thank all speakers for gracing your time and sharing with us your valuable findings and opinions today. First of all, I would like to thank our Almighty Jesus Christ for his everlasting love and care. And we would like to acknowledge our gratitude to our Dean, Head and Dean, for invoking God's blessings on this event. We are very grateful to our chief guest, Pro Vice Chancellor, sir, once again, for his word of encouragement. We express our gratitude to Professor Ken Bhatt for explaining the topic very well, which is with the figures and facts, and acquaint us with figures and facts. We express our sincere thanks to Remco van Santin for giving an excellent coverage and analysis on why and some approaches to second chance for dealing with COVID-19. And also, we mentioned our deep sense of appreciation to Dr. Priska for beautifully explaining with the help of through various slides and then beautifully planned presentation about how to unlock our inner world during the time of stress and grief. We would like to express our hearty thanks to Engineer C. John Wesley for the perfect technical support and guidance extended to make this event successful. International webinar cannot happen overnight. The wheels start rolling weeks ago. It requires planning and a bird's eye view for details. We have been fortunate enough to be backed by our head and dean, Professor Dr. Sister Marian Matthews CZ, and a team of very motivated and dedicated colleagues who know their job and result-oriented. I express my thanks to all our colleagues for your support. Last but not the least, I would like to acknowledge our gratitude to our valuable participants. Without your support, this event may not be happened and successful. Thanks one and all once again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Now we have come at the end of first day international webinar. So thanks to everyone for your participation and for joining with us. Now hope to meet you all for tomorrow's session, that is for day 2 webinar. And we will be meeting at 1 p.m. same time. Thank you to all for joining us. If you have any queries, tomorrow we'll take care of that and we'll answer it. Okay, thank you. Have a nice day.